AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée move into my house, even though I technically have room. I, 32F, bought my house about 3 years ago after saving for what felt like forever. It's a modest 3-bedroom home, not huge or fancy, but it's mine. I live alone except for my dog, Bean, and my younger brother, Max, 28M, has always been very vocal about how lucky I am to have a house in this market. He's not wrong, but it wasn't luck. I worked 2 jobs for years, lived with roommates I didn't love, and skipped vacations to make it happen. Max has always been the golden child. He's charming, funny, and my parents adore him. He's also, if I'm being honest, kind of irresponsible. He changes jobs every few months, spends money like it's burning a hole in his pocket, and seems to think everything will just work out because it always somehow does. A few months ago, Max got engaged to his fiancée, Lauren, 26F. She's nice enough, but she's also very demanding. She wants a big wedding, a fancy honeymoon, and she posts constantly about manifesting abundance, while Max picks up gig work to pay bills. My parents have been helping them financially, which they've done my entire life with Max, but even they're reaching their limit. Last month, Max called me saying they were being kicked out of their apartment. He said the landlord was raising rent, they were already behind, and they had nowhere to go. He asked if they could stay with me just for a few months while they save for a new place. I hesitated, but said I'd think about it. Here's the thing. While my house has 3 bedrooms, one is my office, I work from home full-time, and the other is a guest room/storage space. It's not like I have some big empty wing. Plus, I really value my privacy and routine. I told Max that. He immediately started guilt-tripping me. He said family helps family, that I had extra space I wasn't using, and that if the roles were reversed, he'd absolutely take me in. Which, frankly, I doubt. I've seen how messy he and Lauren are, and I could already imagine them eating my groceries, leaving dishes in the sink, and treating my place like a crash pad. I told him no. I offered to help them find cheaper options nearby, or help them set up a plan to pay off their debt, but I drew the line at them living with me. He got really quiet, then said, "Wow, guess money changes people." That stung. Later that day, my mom called me and said Max was heartbroken that I wouldn't help when I have so much. She said it would only be temporary, that I should think of it as family supporting family. I reminded her that she and Dad have a bigger house and that Max could stay there. She sighed and said, "Well, you know Lauren and I don't really get along. So apparently, it's okay for me to host them, but not them." A week later, my parents and Max showed up at my house to talk. Lauren wasn't there, but they brought her stuff in their car. I kid you not, they were planning to guilt me into saying yes by showing up ready to move her things in. I told them absolutely not, that this was manipulative and unfair. My dad looked uncomfortable, but my mom said, "You're being cruel." Max didn't even look me in the eye. He just muttered that I was selfish and that he hopes I never need family the way he does. They left after a huge argument. Since then, my family chat has been a war zone. My parents think I'm being cold and ungrateful, and Max posted some vague thing on Facebook about how you find out who your real family is when times get hard. I ignored it, but mutual friends have reached out asking if I really kicked him out, which is ridiculous. A few days ago, I heard from a cousin that Max and Lauren are staying in a sketchy, extended stay motel an hour away. My mom sent me a long message saying that she hopes I can live with myself, knowing my brother is struggling while I live comfortably in my 3-bedroom house. It's honestly making me question myself. I do feel guilty sometimes. I know Max is family, and I know it's hard out there right now. But I also feel like this is just another example of how he never takes responsibility and expects others to bail him out. For context, here's why I didn't want them living with me, beyond just privacy. Lauren smokes outside, but still. My lease and insurance prohibit smoking anywhere on the property. Lauren smokes outside, but still. My lease and insurance prohibit smoking anywhere on the property. They have a cat that isn't house-trained, and my dog hates cats. They have a cat that isn't house-trained, and my dog hates cats. I work from home and can't have constant noise or disruptions. I work from home and can't have constant noise or disruptions. I've lent Max money before, and he's never paid me back. I've lent Max money before, and he's never paid me back. I know a few months would turn into as long as we need. I know a few months would turn into as long as we need. After the fallout, my dad privately texted me saying he understands my side, but asked if I could at least offer them a small loan. I told him no. I'm tired of being treated like the safety net because I happen to be the responsible one. Now, though, the guilt is creeping back. My parents have stopped talking to me much. Family dinners are awkward. And even though I know Max's situation is mostly his own doing, I can't help but feel like I might have been too rigid. Part of me wonders if I should have just let them stay for a month and set strict boundaries. But another part of me knows that boundaries don't really exist in my family. They just get bulldozed by guilt. It's been 3 weeks since the fight, and the silence feels awful. I miss my family, but I also don't regret protecting my peace. Still, when I see my brother posting pictures of cheap takeout from the motel with captions like, "Someday we'll laugh about this," I feel like the villain in my own story. So Reddit, am I really the asshole for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée move in with me, even though I had the space? Or was I just setting a boundary that no one wanted to respect? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to give my sister-in-law the wedding dress I designed for myself, and telling her she's not entitled to my creativity just because she's family. So, this has turned into a full-blown family drama, and I honestly can't tell anymore if I'm being unreasonable or if everyone around me has lost it. I, 27F, am getting married next summer. I'm a designer. Specifically, I work in textile and fashion design, though most of my professional work is in freelance custom gowns. I've spent years honing my craft, and designing my own wedding dress has always been my dream project. I've been working on it for almost 8 months now. It's deeply personal. Part of it is inspired by sketches I made as a teenager when I first thought about what kind of woman I'd be when I got married. I've done everything myself. The embroidery, the lace work, the layered satin underskirt, the tiny hand-beaded details. It's not just a dress. It's art. Every part of it means something. Now, here's the issue. My fiancée, 29M, has an older sister, Leah, 32F. Leah got engaged 3 months ago, and her wedding is set for next spring, 2 months before mine. She's a bit entitled, to say it nicely. Leah tends to assume everything should revolve around her. She's always been the favorite in her family. She's also one of those people who think every nice thing someone else has should somehow be shared or copied, because we're family. 2 weeks ago, my future Emile asked if I could help Leah find some inspiration for her dress. I said sure, because that sounded harmless. I love talking design. Leah came over, and while I was showing her different ideas, she saw my sketchbook. She asked what it was, and I told her it contained the final design for my dress. I didn't think much of it, but a few days later, I got a message from Leah saying she'd fallen in love with my design and wanted to use it for her own wedding dress. She even said she'd pay me a few $100s for it since you're family, and I know you wouldn't charge me like a real client. I told her, politely but firmly, that no, I wasn't comfortable with her using my design. It's personal, and I'd spent months creating it for myself. I offered to help her make something different, but equally beautiful. She said, "Oh, come on. It's not like you own the concept of a dress with embroidery. Don't be dramatic." A few days later, my Emile called and said Leah was crying because I was gatekeeping creativity and punishing her for wanting something pretty. She said Leah had already booked a seamstress to start on a dress based on my design since you're not even done with yours yet. I was floored. I told Emile that was completely unacceptable and that I did not give permission. She told me, "It's just a dress. Don't ruin family relationships over fabric." I went to Leah directly. I told her that if she proceeded to copy my design, I'd publicly post proof of my sketches, fabric samples, and timestamps to make it clear she stole my work. She flipped out, called me petty and jealous, and said I was making her look like a bad sister. Then she accused me of trying to outshine her by designing a couture dress just to make her look basic. Since then, it's been nonstop drama. My fiancé is on my side, but he's also exhausted by his family's constant group texts about it. His dad says Leah's acting ridiculous, but his mom is pushing this narrative that I'm ruining family harmony over ego. It got worse last weekend. Leah showed up at my house with her fiancé and her mom to talk this out. What that really meant was trying to corner me into saying yes. I stood my ground and told them flat out that if they went through with making that dress, I would consider it design theft and take action if needed. Leah screamed that I was soulless for threatening her and that I clearly cared more about a stupid piece of fabric than family. Her fiancé just looked embarrassed. Then she said something that really stuck with me. "You're not even a real designer. You're just a girl with a sewing machine pretending to be special. No one cares who made what. Once I wear it, it'll be mine." That honestly broke something in me. I told her she was never welcome in my workspace again, and I shut the door in her face. Since then, half the family's been cold to me, saying I overreacted and should have just let her have the design because it's not like you can't make another one. But here's the thing. I could make another one, but why should I? Why should I give away months of creative effort to someone who doesn't even respect me? It's not about the dress anymore. It's about being treated like my time, skill, and boundaries mean nothing because they're family. My fiancé says he's proud of me for standing up for myself, but he's worried about the tension. His mom hasn't spoken to him since he told her to stop harassing me about it. Leah apparently went ahead and started making a similar dress anyway, which makes me furious. I'm now documenting everything. Emails, texts, timestamps, just in case this turns uglier. The funny part? When my own mom heard the story, she said she's proud of me for finally drawing a line. She's seen me let people walk all over me for years, doing favors for exposure, or because it's family. She said this might be the first time I'm actually protecting my boundaries. Still, I can't shake the guilt. I've never been the type to stir conflict, and now I feel like I've triggered a family Cold War. The holidays are coming up, and apparently Leah's planning to announce her dress at a family dinner. I know she's doing it to get under my skin. Part of me wonders if I should have just let it go. Maybe I'm too attached to the idea of this dress. But every time I imagine seeing her walk down the aisle in something I poured so much of myself into, without respect, without gratitude, it makes me sick. So here I am. My in-laws think I'm selfish. Leah thinks I'm jealous. My fiancé is stuck in the middle, and I'm just trying to stand by my principles. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law use my wedding dress design, even if it means fracturing the family before either of us even says, "I do." AITA for refusing to attend my sister's child-free wedding even though I'm her maid of honor. So I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emily, 27F, who has always been the center of attention type. She's beautiful, charming, and knows how to get people to do what she wants. I love her, I really do, but growing up with her was exhausting. Every family gathering turned into Emily's show, and somehow, even my own birthdays ended up revolving around her drama. When she got engaged last year to her fiancé, Matt, 30M, no one was surprised that she wanted a huge wedding. She started planning it immediately, Pinterest boards, mood boards, spreadsheets, the whole 9 yards. She asked me to be her maid of honor, and despite knowing how controlling she can be, I said yes because, well, she's my sister. Here's where the problem started. I have a son, Ethan, who's 4 years old. He's my world. My husband and I struggled with infertility for years, and when we finally had Ethan, it felt like a miracle. My sister has always been affectionate toward him. She even calls him her little sidekick. About 3 months ago, Emily sent out her wedding invitations and the wedding info packet. Yes, an entire packet. That's when I noticed the phrase, strictly child-free event, bolded and underlined on multiple pages. I was shocked. I called her and asked if that included Ethan. She said yes, of course, and that she wanted an elegant adult atmosphere. I reminded her that I was her maid of honor and that it would be nearly impossible for me to fulfill that role without bringing Ethan, since the wedding was a weekend event out of town and I didn't have anyone who could watch him for 3 days. My husband is in the military and will be deployed during that time. Emily said that wasn't her problem. She told me I could hire a babysitter or bring my mom to watch him at the hotel. I reminded her that mom would also be at the wedding. She then said, "Well, figure it out, because I'm not making exceptions for anyone." I told her I respected her right to have a child-free wedding, but if she wasn't willing to make an exception for her nephew, the child of her maid of honor, no less, then I couldn't attend. I didn't say it angrily. I just told her calmly that it wouldn't be feasible. She flipped out. She accused me of trying to ruin her big day and making everything about myself. She said that since I had years to plan for childcare, I should have already arranged something. I reminded her that her wedding date had only been finalized 4 months ago, and it wasn't exactly easy to find someone trustworthy to stay with my child for 3 days in another city. After that conversation, she sent me a long text, basically saying I was selfish and jealous because I couldn't stand that the attention wasn't on me for once. That last part stung, because if anything, I've spent my whole life trying not to outshine her. My parents found out and immediately took Emily's side. My mom said, "It's one weekend. Can't you just find someone? You're making this harder than it needs to be." I told her that if the roles were reversed, she wouldn't even consider going to an event where her kid wasn't allowed. My dad was quieter, but basically said, "It's Emily's wedding. Let her have it her way." So I didn't fight it anymore. I just sent Emily a polite message saying that I loved her, wished her a beautiful wedding, but I wouldn't be attending. That's when things really blew up. Emily posted a long paragraph on Instagram about fake family members who can't support your happiness unless it benefits them. Everyone in our extended family knew she was talking about me. I didn't respond publicly, but people started messaging me asking what happened. Apparently, Emily told everyone I refused to come because I couldn't bear not to be the center of attention. She left out the part about my son being banned. My aunt called me crying, saying she couldn't believe I'd abandoned my sister's wedding over something so small. But here's where it gets worse. A few days ago, Emily called me again, sobbing. The florist had canceled, one of her bridesmaids had dropped out, and the caterer messed up her menu. She said she really needed me to be there and that maybe Ethan could stay in the hotel room with a babysitter during the ceremony. I told her that wouldn't work because I didn't feel comfortable leaving him alone with a stranger in a new city. She said, "You're being ridiculous. Everyone leaves their kids with sitters." I said, "Maybe so, but that's my decision to make." Then she said, "Fine, don't come. But don't expect me to forgive you when I realize who was really there for me and who wasn't." That was a week ago. Now the wedding is next weekend, and I'm holding firm in my decision. My husband supports me completely, but my parents are furious. My mom said that a good sister would find a way. I've been second-guessing myself ever since. I know weddings are stressful, and maybe I could have tried harder to make it work. But it's not like I'm refusing out of spite. I simply can't leave my child, and she won't bend even slightly. Part of me feels like I'm letting her down as a sister. But another part of me feels like she's punishing me for setting a boundary, which she's never been good at accepting. Emily has always gotten her way, and maybe she assumed this would be no different. Still, when I look at our family group chat, everyone excitedly talking about dresses, speeches, and photos, I can't help but feel like the villain. Like I'm the unreasonable one for not doing whatever it takes to be there. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because my son isn't invited, even though I'm supposed to be the maid of honor. AITA for refusing to let my parents move into the guest house after they disowned me 8 years ago. When I, 30F, was 22, my parents kicked me out of the house for getting pregnant out of wedlock. I grew up in a very religious household. Church twice a week, youth group, the whole thing. My parents were strict about everything. No dating, no drinking, no parties, and absolutely no sex before marriage. They made it very clear that if I ever disgraced the family, I'd be on my own. At 21, I met my boyfriend, now husband, 33M, when I moved out for college. He was kind, funny, and treated me like an actual human being, not a porcelain doll who had to live by someone else's rules. A year into dating, I got pregnant unexpectedly. I was terrified. When I told my parents, my mom started crying and my dad went silent. I remember him standing up, walking to the door, and saying, "You know where it is." I thought he meant the door to my room. He meant the front door. They told me to pack my things and leave immediately. My mom handed me a trash bag and told me not to come back until you've repented. I spent that night in my car, crying in the parking lot of a grocery store. My boyfriend came to pick me up at 3 a.m. He took me in without hesitation, even though he lived with roommates and barely made enough money to cover rent. We struggled. We really did. There were nights we ate ramen and shared a can of tuna between us. I worked 2 part-time jobs while finishing my degree. He picked up extra shifts at his warehouse job. When our daughter, Lily, was born, we had nothing but love, exhaustion, and a cheap stroller we bought from Facebook Marketplace. But we made it work. My parents never reached out. Not once. They didn't call when Lily was born. They didn't send a card, a message, or a single word. I tried contacting them twice over the years. Both times my mom said they were not ready to have a conversation. After that, I stopped trying. Fast forward 8 years. My husband and I have done well for ourselves. He started his own HVAC business, and I'm a nurse practitioner. We bought a small house 3 years ago. Then last year, we were able to buy the house next door when it went up for sale. It came with a small guest house in the back that we renovated into a studio. We plan to rent it out, but we've been using it mostly for guests or as an office. About 2 months ago, my mom called me out of the blue. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, maybe guilt or curiosity, made me pick up. She sounded hesitant, but emotional. She said she and my dad had fallen on hard times. My dad's business partner ran off with a bunch of money, and they'd lost their home. They were currently staying with a family friend, but needed to move out soon. Then she said the words I never expected to hear. We were wondering if we could stay in your guest house for a while. I was speechless. She went on to explain how they missed me, how family should stick together, and how it's time to heal old wounds. When I asked if my dad agreed with this, she admitted he wasn't thrilled, but was willing to put the past behind us. I told her I'd think about it. When I told my husband, he immediately said absolutely not. He reminded me of everything they'd done, how they treated me, and how they abandoned Lily. He said, they only want you now because they need something. They didn't care when you were crying in a car with a baby inside you. I agreed with him, but part of me felt guilty. They're still my parents. I called my mom back the next day and told her that I wasn't comfortable having them live here. I said I appreciated the apology, but I couldn't just forget 8 years of silence. I also told her I didn't trust that my dad wouldn't say something hurtful to Lily or my husband. She got quiet for a moment, then said, I see. I guess forgiveness only works one way in your world. Then she hung up. A few days later, I got a long message from my dad. He said he regrets how things went down, but that a parent's discipline should not lead to a lifetime of punishment. He accused me of holding a grudge, of teaching Lily resentment, and of turning my back on family. I didn't reply. Then my younger brother, 27M, called me and said I was being vindictive. Apparently, my parents had told him that they had nowhere to go. He said, they made a mistake, yeah, but they're still mom and dad. You have space. It's not like you're struggling. He doesn't understand what it was like. He was the golden child, the one who never got in trouble. He still lives near them and helps out at their church. My mom sent one last text saying, we forgive you for the past. I hope one day you can forgive us too. That line hit me hard, the way she framed it like I was the one who needed forgiving. Since then, I've been struggling with guilt. My husband says I made the right choice and that he'd be uncomfortable having them so close, especially since Lily's at the age where she asks questions. She's noticed pictures of my parents when I was young and asked who they are. I tell her they're grandma and grandpa, but that we don't see them much. Part of me wonders if I'm being cruel. They're old now, tired, and probably scared. Another part of me remembers every night I cried myself to sleep wondering why I wasn't worth a phone call. A few people at work I've confided in said they understand, but one coworker said, you'll regret it when they die. That's been eating at me. It's been 3 weeks since I said no, and now I hear from my brother that they've moved into a small motel outside of town. I can't help but feel responsible, even though logically I know I'm not. Sometimes I look out the window at the guest house and imagine them there, maybe sitting on the porch, maybe cooking dinner while Lily plays outside. Then I imagine the inevitable tension, the awkward silences, the judgmental looks, the comments about living in sin. I've come so far from the person they wanted me to be. I built a life they told me I didn't deserve. I love my husband, my daughter, and the peace we've created. But I also can't shake this nagging feeling that I'm punishing them in a way that makes me no better than they were. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my parents move into the guest house after they disowned me 8 years ago. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in with me after she accidentally ruined my wedding. So, for context, I, 29F, got married about 6 months ago to my now husband, Daniel, 31M. I have one sister, Melissa, 26F, who's always been intense. We were close when we were little, but as we got older, she started competing with me over literally everything: grades, friends, clothes, attention from our parents, and later, relationships. I always brushed it off as sibling rivalry, but over the years it started feeling toxic. I've always been the more reserved one, while Melissa is loud, charming, and has a tendency to make everything about herself. If we're at a family dinner and someone asks me how work is going, she'll interrupt to talk about a crazy client or something her boyfriend did. It's exhausting, but I've learned to pick my battles. When I got engaged, Melissa seemed genuinely happy for me at first. She offered to help with planning and even volunteered to be my maid of honor. I hesitated because she can be unpredictable, but I thought maybe this would be a chance for us to reconnect. Big mistake. From the start, she made everything difficult. She argued with the other bridesmaids, complained that the dress I picked for her washed her out, and kept suggesting fun changes to the wedding, like having the bridal party do a choreographed TikTok dance down the aisle. When I said no, she called me a control freak. Daniel told me to ignore her and focus on us, which I did. Fast forward to the week before the wedding. Melissa lost her job. She called me sobbing, saying her boss was jealous of her and that she didn't know how she'd pay rent. I told her I was sorry and offered to let her stay with me and Daniel temporarily after the honeymoon until she got back on her feet. She thanked me and said she didn't know what she'd do without me. I thought that was that. Then came the wedding day. Everything was perfect. The venue, the flowers, the weather. I was actually relaxed for the first time in months. Melissa was running late, of course, but she arrived right before the ceremony started. Her dress looked slightly different than the others, but I didn't have time to think much about it. When it was time for speeches, Melissa was the first to go. I expected something heartfelt, maybe a few jokes. Instead, she started by saying, I wasn't sure I should even be here today because, well, some people don't always get what they want. The room went awkwardly quiet. She laughed like it was a joke, then launched into a rambling story about how I always got the guy growing up and how Daniel used to have a crush on her first when they met at a party years ago. I swear the air was sucked out of the room. I saw my dad bury his face in his hands. She ended her speech by saying, but hey, love works in mysterious ways, right? Let's raise a glass to my sister for finally finding someone who could handle her. I wanted to disappear. Daniel looked furious, but we both tried to move on and enjoy the night. I told myself she was just drunk and upset about losing her job. But it got worse. During the reception, Melissa got completely wasted. She kept dragging people to the dance floor and shouting, I'm the fun sister, at the top of her lungs. At one point, she tried to grab the microphone from the DJ to sing a song for the bride, and when he said no, she poured champagne all over his equipment. He nearly walked out. The final straw was when I stepped outside for some air and came back to find her sitting in my seat next to Daniel, with her arm draped over his shoulder, giggling about how this could have been us. Daniel immediately stood up and told her to leave. She started crying, screaming that we were humiliating her, and ran out. My maid of honor, my best friend, not Melissa, followed her to make sure she got home safe. The next day, Melissa texted me an apology that said, sorry if I ruined the vibe. I was just emotional. Hope you're not mad. I didn't respond right away because I honestly didn't know what to say. When I finally did, I told her she owed me and Daniel both a serious apology and that her behavior was unacceptable. She accused me of being dramatic and said everyone was too uptight. After our honeymoon, she called and asked when she could move in like we discussed. I told her that after what happened, I didn't think that was a good idea. She went ballistic, said I was holding a grudge, that families should forgive, that she had nowhere else to go. I told her she could stay with our parents instead. She screamed that they were on my side and hung up. Now my parents are divided. My mom says I should let her stay because she's going through a lot, and family doesn't turn their backs on each other. My dad, however, said Melissa needed to learn some accountability. He saw how devastated I was on my wedding day and told me I have every right to set boundaries. Daniel is firmly against having her in our house. He said he's willing to help her find a place, but he doesn't want her living with us. Melissa has been posting vague things on social media like, "Some people only love you when you're useful," and mutual friends have messaged me asking what happened. She told them I abandoned her when she needed help the most. A few of them think I'm being heartless since I have a stable life, and she doesn't, but they don't know the full story. Now I'm starting to feel conflicted. I know she's struggling, and part of me feels guilty because she's still my sister. But another part of me can't get over how she humiliated me and disrespected both me and Daniel. I've been in therapy long enough to know that setting boundaries doesn't make me cruel, but when my mom tearfully says, "You two only have each other," it still gets to me. Daniel says if I cave, he'll support me, but he's worried it'll destroy our peace. He's right. I worked so hard to build a life that isn't constant chaos, and I can already picture Melissa barging in, bringing drama, and making every moment about her again. Still, I can't help but feel like maybe I'm being too cold. So Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister move in after she wrecked my wedding, even though she has nowhere else to go? AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my house after she lost hers, even though I technically have the space. So I, 35F, own a 4-bedroom house that I bought 3 years ago after a long and exhausting few years of saving, budgeting, and frankly, sacrificing a lot of my personal life. I live alone, and yes, I'm well aware that having a 4-bedroom house for one person sounds excessive. But I grew up in a family where we were always crammed into tiny spaces, and I promised myself that one day I'd have a place that felt roomy, peaceful, and entirely mine. My sister, 32F, and I have never been particularly close. We're civil, but she's always been the chaotic one. She has 3 kids, 9M, 6F, and 3M, and has gone through 2 divorces. She's constantly in some financial mess, but my parents always bail her out, saying she has kids, she needs help. I don't have children, and they often treat me like I'm selfish for focusing on my career instead of starting a family. About 2 months ago, my sister called me in tears. She'd been evicted because she was behind on rent. She said her ex-husband stopped paying child support. Not true, as I later found out, and that she had nowhere to go. My parents' house is small, and they told her she couldn't bring the kids there long-term. So she asked if they could move in with me just until she gets back on her feet. I hesitated, but agreed to let them stay for 1 week while she sorted things out. I thought I was doing a kind thing, but that week was chaos. The kids ran wild, broke several things, and smeared peanut butter on my beige couch. My sister barely lifted a finger. She didn't cook, didn't clean, and treated my place like an Airbnb she didn't have to pay for. Every morning, I'd wake up to noise, mess, and crying. Every night, I'd go to bed exhausted, wondering how she could live like that daily. At the end of the week, I gently asked if she'd found another place. She said no, she hadn't even started looking yet. When I told her that she couldn't stay longer, she got defensive. She said I was being heartless, that family helps family, and that she and her kids had nowhere else to go. I reminded her that I agreed to 1 week, not indefinitely. She started crying and saying I didn't understand what it's like to be a mother. After a long and emotional argument, she left with the kids to stay at a friend's place temporarily. I felt awful but also relieved. My house was finally quiet again. Fast forward to last week. My sister called again. She said her friend couldn't host her anymore and that she had nowhere to go. She asked to move back in, this time saying it would be just for a few months. She offered to pay something once she got a job, though she didn't specify how much or when that might be. I told her no, firmly. I said the last time was too disruptive and that I wasn't willing to do it again. I offered to help her find resources, like housing assistance programs, temporary shelters, or financial aid, but she refused, saying that those options were humiliating and that I should be stepping up as her sister. Then she called our parents, and they, of course, took her side. My mom said, You have 4 bedrooms and live alone. You're being selfish. My dad said, those kids are your nieces and nephews. Don't they deserve a roof over their heads? I told them that I sympathize, but it's not my responsibility to fix her situation. I work long hours, and I've bought this home to finally have peace and stability. My sister has made poor choices repeatedly, and every time someone bails her out, she doesn't learn. My mom accused me of thinking I'm better than the family because I have money now. She even said, if you don't take them in, you'll regret it when you're old and alone. That really stung. The family group chat has been a war zone ever since. Some cousins say they understand where I'm coming from, but my parents and sister are painting me as some kind of villain who values her furniture more than family. The part that's messing with me is the kids. It's not their fault their mom is irresponsible. They're innocent, and I do feel bad knowing they might have to bounce between temporary places. But at the same time, I know if I let them in, it won't be temporary. My sister has a history of overstaying everywhere she's been just until she gets back on her feet. I also know she won't respect my boundaries. The last time she lived with me, she'd go through my pantry without asking, leave dirty dishes everywhere, and let her kids play with things I explicitly said were off limits. She even invited a friend over once without asking. When I confronted her, she said I was uptight and didn't understand how families live. To make things worse, my parents recently told me they were thinking of cutting me out of their will because of how I abandoned my sister in her time of need. That's wild to me, considering I'm the only one in the family who's financially independent and has never asked them for help. Now my sister has been posting vague things on social media about selfish people who only care about themselves, and mutual friends have started reaching out, implying that I should just be kind and take them in. I feel torn between wanting to do the morally right thing and wanting to protect my peace, my home, and my sanity. I've worked too hard for this house to let it become a daycare or crash pad for someone who refuses to take accountability. The guilt is eating at me, though. I see pictures of her kids on social media and wonder if I'm the bad guy for not helping more. I know if the roles were reversed, she wouldn't do the same for me. She's even admitted as much in the past, but that doesn't make this easier. I keep thinking about that one night during the week they stayed with me. Her youngest woke up crying at 2 a.m., and I found him standing in the hallway with his blanket, saying he was scared. I comforted him and tucked him back in, and in that moment, I felt this deep ache of responsibility. Like, maybe I could be the person to give them a bit of stability. But then the next morning, I found juice spilled on my laptop, and the spell broke completely. Everyone around me seems to think family obligation should trump personal boundaries. But I can't help thinking that enabling her again would only delay the inevitable, her having to learn how to actually manage her life. So, am I really an awful person for saying no? Am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister and her kids move in, even though I technically could? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's replacement wedding after she uninvited my wife on the first one? So I, 34M, have a younger sister, Emily, 30F. We were pretty close growing up, though she's always had a flair for drama. My wife, Tessa, 33F, and I have been married for 4 years, together for almost 10. Emily and Tessa used to get along fine until Emily got engaged to her now husband, Ryan, 31M, about 2 years ago. From the start, Emily's wedding planning was intense. Everything had to be picture perfect. She's one of those people who treats Pinterest like scripture. The theme changed 3 times. She had color-coded spreadsheets. She made a private Facebook group for wedding contributors. It was a whole thing. Tessa was originally a bridesmaid, but Emily started micromanaging her to the point of insanity. Down to your nail color must be OPI ballet slippers, and you have to wear your hair in a low bun, no exceptions. Tessa tried to go along, but she's a creative person, graphic designer, and she doesn't love being controlled like that. The breaking point came at Emily's bridal shower. During the game, someone joked that Tessa should plan Emily's future baby shower since she has such good taste. Emily responded, "Oh, I don't know. I'd rather have someone who actually listens to instructions." Everyone laughed awkwardly. Later that night, Tessa pulled Emily aside and told her that comment hurt her feelings. Emily apparently rolled her eyes and said, "It was a joke. You're too sensitive." 2 weeks later, Tessa got an actual formal email, from Emily saying she was being relieved of bridesmaid duties. Emily said it was because she wanted a more cohesive aesthetic and didn't want mixed energy in her bridal party. I confronted Emily over it, and she insisted it wasn't personal. I told her it sure sounded personal, and if Tessa wasn't welcome as a bridesmaid, we might not come at all. Emily accused me of choosing my wife over family. I said, that's kind of the point of marriage. So we didn't go to her wedding. Fast forward about 9 months. Emily and Ryan's marriage imploded. For what I gathered, Ryan cheated with someone from his gym. Emily moved back in with our parents and was understandably devastated. I reached out a few times to check on her. We weren't close, but I didn't want her to feel abandoned. Then, earlier this year, she started dating a new guy named Chris, 33M. He seems fine, quiet, pretty normal. They moved fast. In August, Emily announced she and Chris were engaged. Everyone was surprised, but we all tried to be supportive. Now here's where the real issue starts. Emily invited the whole family to her replacement wedding this December. The invite literally said, "Join us for the celebration of love, healing, and second chances." It was worded like a redemption arc. My parents were thrilled she was finding happiness again. I assumed both Tessa and I were invited. But when we got our envelope, it was addressed only to me. I thought it was an oversight. I texted Emily, "Hey, should I RSVP for two?" She replied, "Actually, it's just you this time. Nothing personal, but Tessa's presence would be complicated." I called her immediately. She told me she didn't want old energy from people associated with her last wedding. Apparently, because Tessa had boycotted the first wedding, she represents negativity. I reminded Emily that I also didn't attend. She said that was different because I'm her brother. Tessa told me she was fine not going, but I could tell she was hurt. She said it felt humiliating to be excluded again, especially for reasons that made no sense. She said if I wanted to go, I should, but she didn't want me to feel like I had to choose. After thinking it over, I RSVP'd no. I texted Emily that if my wife wasn't welcome, I wasn't either. She sent back a long paragraph saying she was deeply disappointed in me, that I was punishing her for setting boundaries, and that I was making everything about Tessa again. She told me I was enabling disrespect toward her. Since then, my parents have been furious. They say I'm being heartless and kicking Emily while she's rebuilding her life. My mom actually said, "Can't Tessa sit one event out so your sister can have peace?" I asked my mom why Emily's peace depends on excluding my wife, and she couldn't really answer. She just said, "Emily has been through enough." Now the family group chat is divided. Some cousins think Emily is being controlling and ridiculous. Others think I should be the bigger person and attend for family harmony. To make things even messier, Emily posted something on Facebook about choosing to surround yourself with people who support your healing journey, not those who remind you of past pain. A bunch of relatives commented with heart emojis, and one of my aunts tagged me saying, "You'll understand someday." The truth is, I do feel bad for Emily. I know her first marriage crashing and burning was traumatic. But it's hard to feel sympathetic when she keeps treating my wife like she's some kind of bad omen. Tessa's been nothing but gracious. She hasn't badmouthed Emily once, even though she has every reason to. She even bought a small gift from the registry for good manners. But the whole situation has reopened old wounds, and it's made me realize how one-sided my family's forgiveness tends to be. My dad keeps saying, "You know how your sister is," as if that excuses everything. And I'm tired of that line. Emily is 30, not 13. She knows what she's doing. She just doesn't like consequences. Part of me wonders if I should have gone just to keep the peace. Maybe it would have meant something to her. But another part of me thinks that going alone would have been endorsing her behavior, telling her it's okay to exclude people for arbitrary reasons and then hide behind the word boundaries. The latest twist? Emily sent out a second round of invitations labeled VIP dinner for family supporters. I wasn't included. My mom said, "Well, you didn't support her choice." That stung more than I expected. So now I'm sitting here wondering if I really am the jerk for not sucking it up and attending solo. Maybe I should have gone just to show I care. Maybe Emily genuinely sees Tessa as a painful reminder of everything that went wrong before. Or maybe she's just rewriting history to make herself the eternal victim. Either way, my family's acting like I've committed a major betrayal by skipping this wedding, and Emily hasn't spoken to me in months. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's second wedding because she uninvited my wife again. AITA for refusing to go to my brother's wedding after he uninvited my wife because of family image. So I, 34M, have been married to my wife, Jenna, 31F, for 5 years. We've been together for almost 10, and she's honestly my best friend. She's smart, funny, and has a very laid-back personality. However, Jenna has a noticeable facial scar from a car accident when she was 19. It's not something she hides or is ashamed of. It's just part of who she is. My brother, Luke, 29M, is getting married in December to his fiancée, Emily, 27F. Emily's family is extremely wealthy, old money type of people. Her parents are very particular about appearances, social status, and how things look. I've always found them polite but cold. They make subtle comments about people's jobs, clothes, and even hairstyles. They once told my mom that she had a charming working-class accent. My parents laughed it off, but it was definitely condescending. A few weeks ago, I got a call from Luke asking if Jenna and I could come to a family dinner to discuss wedding details. I thought it was weird because he usually just texts me, but we agreed to go. When we arrived, Emily's parents were there, along with Luke and Emily. The vibe was immediately uncomfortable. Emily's mother, in particular, kept giving Jenna these polite but stiff smiles. After dinner, Luke asked if he and I could talk privately. He looked nervous. He started with, "I really don't know how to say this, man, but it's about the wedding." I assumed maybe he was having cold feet or money problems. "Nope," he said. "Emily's parents are very particular about the photos and the guest list. They think it would be better if Jenna didn't come." At first, I didn't even process what he was saying. I said, "What do you mean, better if she didn't come? She's my wife." He got this pained look on his face and said, "It's not me, okay? It's them. They think her scar might draw attention in the pictures. They want everything to look perfect and, elegant." I genuinely thought he was joking. I waited for him to laugh or say just kidding, but he didn't. He just looked down and mumbled that he hoped I'd understand. I asked him if he was actually supporting this. He said, "It's one day, man. You know how important this wedding is for Emily's family. They're covering most of the costs. Can you just maybe come alone? We'll make it up to Jenna later." I don't even remember how I responded at first. I just felt this weird mix of shock, disgust, and disbelief. Jenna was in the living room chatting with Emily's parents, completely unaware of what was happening. I left the room, grabbed Jenna's hand, and said, "We're leaving." Later that night, I told her what Luke had said. She was quiet for a long time, then just said, "Well, that's humiliating." She didn't cry or yell. She just went very still, which is how I know she's really hurt. Then she said, "Don't make this a big deal, okay? It's their circus." But I could tell it cut deep. The next morning, I called Luke and told him that if Jenna wasn't welcome, neither was I. He got defensive immediately, saying I was overreacting and making it personal when it's not. He said Emily's parents were just traditional and care about aesthetics. He kept insisting it wasn't meant as an insult. I told him there was no universe where excluding my wife because of a scar wasn't insulting. Things have spiraled since then. My mom is furious with Luke and told him she's disappointed in him. My dad, who usually avoids drama, told Luke that if he didn't fix it, he'd be ashamed to walk him down the aisle. Emily's parents apparently called my parents overly emotional and said they were turning a simple request into a moral crusade. Emily texted me separately, saying she was so sorry, but that her parents were very particular about photography and that it would ruin the harmony of the aesthetic they were going for. I didn't even know how to respond to that. Who talks like that about a human being? Now Luke is saying I'm ruining his wedding and making him choose between his family and his fiancée's family. He said he thought I'd understand since Jenna probably doesn't even want to be around people who stare. That comment almost made me lose it. Jenna doesn't need or want pity. She's confident and doesn't hide from anyone. My mom keeps trying to mediate, but I've made up my mind. I'm not going, and I won't support a marriage that starts with that kind of cruelty. The problem is that now some extended family members are telling me I should just let it go. My aunt said, it's not like they said she's ugly. They just want nice photos. Another cousin said I should think of the bigger picture and not hold a grudge. But how do I just pretend this didn't happen? My wife was essentially told she's too ugly to be seen in wedding pictures. That's not something I can shrug off. Jenna keeps telling me she doesn't want to be the reason my family is fighting, but she also said she won't ever forget what Luke and Emily did. A few nights ago, Luke came to my house unannounced. He looked exhausted and said he didn't want to lose his brother over something superficial. I told him that's exactly the problem. He thinks it's superficial, but to me, it's about respect and loyalty. I asked him if Emily or her parents had changed their minds. He said no, but he wanted me to just come anyway, to keep the peace. I told him peace built on disrespect isn't peace, it's submission. He left angry and said, fine, if you're not there, don't bother calling me after the wedding. I said, if you go through with this, I won't need to. My parents are still trying to talk him out of it, but the wedding is in a few weeks, and I doubt they'll change their minds. Part of me feels sad. It's my brother, and we were close growing up. But another part of me feels like if I cave, I'm telling my wife she's less than. I can't do that. Now half of the family thinks I'm standing up for what's right, and the other half thinks I'm being dramatic and making Luke's big day about me. Even some of my friends said maybe I should just show up and ignore them because it's only one day. But I keep picturing Jenna sitting at home alone while they take their perfect little family photos, pretending she doesn't exist. And I can't stomach it. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to go to my brother's wedding after he uninvited my wife because of how she looks? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my house after she temporarily lost hers even though I have plenty of space. I, 33F, bought my own house 3 years ago after saving for nearly a decade. It's a modest 3-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood, but to me it's everything. I worked 2 jobs for years, skipped vacations, and basically lived off instant noodles to make the down payment. It's the first thing I've ever owned that's truly mine, and I'm proud of it. My sister, Megan, 36F, has always had a very different lifestyle. She's more spontaneous, emotional, and honestly, reckless. She's married to Brad, 38M, and they have 3 kids, 10, 7, and 4. They've always lived kind of paycheck to paycheck, mostly because they tend to spend whatever they get. They've moved around a lot because of missed rent or job changes, but it's always just temporary. Back in August, Megan called me crying because they'd been evicted. Apparently, Brad had been laid off 2 months earlier, and they couldn't keep up with the rent. She asked if they could stay with me just for a couple of weeks until they got back on their feet. Now, I'm not heartless. I know how tough things are right now, and those are my nieces and nephew. But I also know my sister. A couple of weeks has a way of becoming a few months, and then until after Christmas, and then until we figure things out. I've seen it happen with other relatives before. Still, I felt bad, so I told her I'd think about it. I checked with my boyfriend, Nate, 34M, who doesn't live with me, but stays over sometimes. He looked uncomfortable immediately. He said, you know, if they move in, they're not leaving anytime soon, right? He reminded me that Megan and Brad have a history of letting other people take care of their problems. I decided to call Megan back the next day and offer compromise. I said they could stay for 1 week max, just to figure out logistics and find another solution, but I needed it to be short-term. She hesitated but agreed, sounding relieved. Well, within 3 days of them moving in, my house was chaos. The kids were loud and messy. Not unusual for kids, but I'm not used to it. Toys everywhere, dirty dishes constantly piling up even though I cooked every night, and Megan and Brad treated it like a mini vacation. Brad spent most of his time watching TV or looking for jobs online, which seemed to involve a lot of YouTube breaks. Megan spent hours on the phone with friends, gossiping and complaining about their bad luck. By the end of the week, there was no sign of them leaving. I asked Megan how the apartment search was going. She sighed dramatically and said everything was too expensive or not kid-friendly. I asked about Brad's job applications, and she said he needed some time to figure out what direction he wants to go in next. That was when I realized they were planning to settle in. So I sat them down and told them gently but firmly that I needed my space back. Megan immediately started crying, saying I was kicking her kids out on the street. Brad said, "We're family. Family helps each other." I told them I had helped by giving them a place to stay for a week, but I couldn't let this drag on indefinitely. I suggested they reach out to Brad's parents, who live about an hour away and have a larger house. Megan refused, saying Brad's parents judged them too much and she wouldn't subject her kids to that. I told her I understood, but I wasn't an option either. She stormed off, and for 2 days, she barely spoke to me. When the week ended, they didn't leave. Instead, Megan told me they needed just a little more time because the youngest had a cold. I reminded her of our agreement, and she accused me of being heartless. I said she had until the weekend to make other arrangements. She called me controlling and said I don't understand what it's like to have a family to take care of. At that point, I stopped arguing and just sent her a text the next morning saying they needed to move out by Sunday. I even offered to pay for a motel for 3 nights while they found a longer-term place. Sunday came, and they still hadn't packed. I told them I wasn't backing down, and Brad actually said, "We're not leaving. You can't just throw your family out." I calmly told them I'd contact the police if they refused to go. Megan looked stunned and said, "You wouldn't dare." I said I really didn't want to, but I would. That night, they left, after slamming a few doors and calling me cold and selfish. Since then, the fallout has been enormous. Megan has told most of our extended family that I kicked her children out in the cold. Our mom is furious at me, saying I should have been more patient and that Megan just needed stability. She keeps saying, "You have 3 bedrooms. You live alone. What's the big deal?" I tried explaining that it's about boundaries, not space, but she doesn't get it. Brad's parents called to say they ended up taking them in after all, and things are already tense. Apparently, Megan's been complaining that their house rules are too strict. Now, some of my cousins think I was right, others think I went too far. I'm genuinely torn. I didn't want to see my nieces and nephew in a bad situation, but I also knew that letting them stay indefinitely would have destroyed my peace and probably my relationship with Nate. Part of me wonders if I should have given them a little more time, maybe another week or 2. But the other part of me thinks if I hadn't drawn that line, they would still be here months later, and I'd be living like a stranger in my own house. Last night, my mom called again, saying Megan's oldest cried and asked why Annie didn't love them anymore. That broke me. I don't want the kids to think I rejected them. I tried to explain that it wasn't about them, it was about the adults not taking responsibility, but it still feels awful. Now I'm questioning everything. Did I overreact? Should I have been more patient? Or did I do the right thing by standing firm before things got out of hand? My mom keeps saying blood is thicker than water, but I keep thinking that love doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she made my daughter step down as a flower girl because her skin didn't match the color scheme. So, some background. I, 38F, have a sister, Melissa, 34F, who's always been the kind of person who wants everything to look perfect. She's been planning her wedding for over a year, and honestly, it's been the most over-the-top event our family has ever seen. Think themed engagement party, bridal brunches, color-coordinated everything, and a Pinterest board that could rival a professional wedding planner's portfolio. For context, I'm white, but my husband, 40M, is black, and we have 2 children. Our daughter, Lily, 9, and our son, Ethan, 6. My sister has always been polite to my husband and kids, but I've noticed that she sometimes makes weird comments, like calling Lily's curls exotic or saying she wishes she tanned that easily. Stuff that makes me uncomfortable but never felt worth blowing up over. A few months ago, Melissa asked Lily to be one of her flower girls. Lily was thrilled. She talked about it constantly. She even drew pictures of herself walking down the aisle, practiced throwing petals in our living room, and couldn't wait to wear a princess dress. It meant a lot to her. Melissa's wedding theme is Ethereal Garden, which basically means everything is blush pink, cream, gold, and sage green. She told everyone the bridal party needed to fit the aesthetic. Whatever, that's her prerogative. It's her wedding. I bought Lily's dress according to the color swatch Melissa sent, a pale blush with a gold sash. It looked adorable, and I sent Melissa photos for approval. She said Lily looked so cute, so I thought everything was fine. Fast forward to about 3 weeks ago. Melissa calls me sounding weird. She starts off with small talk, then says, "Hey, so about Lily being a flower girl." My stomach dropped immediately. She said she'd been talking to her wedding planner and photographer about the ceremony photos, and they mentioned color harmony for the lineup of the bridal party. Apparently, the planner had said something about tonal balance when it comes to skin tones and dress colors in outdoor light. I didn't even understand what that meant until Melissa awkwardly said, "It's just that Lily's coloring doesn't really blend with the rest of the girls." I thought I misheard her. I asked what she meant, and she said, and I quote, "It's just that with her darker skin and the blush tones, it kind of throws the visual balance off." The photographer said it might look uncoordinated. I was stunned into silence. I said, "You're telling me you don't want my daughter in your wedding because her skin doesn't match your color palette?" Melissa rushed to say, No, it's not about race. It's just aesthetics. It's a design thing." I told her she sounded insane. She insisted it wasn't personal and said she wanted Lily to still be part of the day by handing out programs or blowing bubbles after the ceremony instead. I told her absolutely not. She wasn't demoting my child like that. Lily had been looking forward to this for months. Melissa got defensive and said I was being dramatic, that she just wanted the wedding photos to look cohesive. When I told my husband, he was livid. He wanted to call her immediately, but I asked him to hold off until I cooled down. I decided to call my mom instead, hoping she'd talk sense into Melissa. Big mistake. My mom said Melissa probably didn't mean it the way it sounded and that it's her day and she's allowed to make choices. I asked her point blank if she thought it was okay to exclude her biracial granddaughter for aesthetic reasons, and she got quiet before saying, "It's not ideal, but maybe it's better not to make a big deal about it." That was the last straw for me. I told Melissa we wouldn't be attending the wedding at all. She started crying, saying I was ruining her big day, that people would notice we weren't there and it would cause drama. I told her she caused the drama when she decided her niece's skin tone didn't fit her ethereal fantasy. Since then, the family group chat has exploded. My mom keeps telling me to be the bigger person and attend anyway, saying Lily doesn't have to know why she's not a flower girl. My dad hasn't said much, but I can tell he's uncomfortable with the whole thing. My aunts and cousins are split. Some think Melissa went way too far. Others say it's not worth blowing up the family over one bad decision. Meanwhile, Melissa keeps texting me about how hurtful it is that I'm boycotting her wedding and how she didn't mean it like that. Lily, of course, knows something's wrong. She asked me if she did something bad because Auntie said she didn't need me to wear the dress anymore. I tried so hard not to cry when she said that. I told her she didn't do anything wrong and that we're just not going to the wedding because we have other plans that weekend. But she's not stupid. She's been quiet and withdrawn ever since. My husband is proud of me for standing my ground, but he's also angry that my family isn't backing us up. He said this situation proves they've never really accepted him or our kids as part of the family, and honestly, I'm starting to agree. I keep replaying the conversation with Melissa and wondering how she could say something like that and not realize how ugly it was. Now my mom says Melissa wants to apologize before the wedding and hopes I'll change my mind. But I don't think I can face her, not after hearing her reduce my child to a color mismatch. Part of me wonders if refusing to go makes me the asshole, like maybe I should have just sucked it up for the sake of keeping the peace. But every time I picture Lily's face when she asked if she did something wrong, I feel sick. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she made my daughter step down as a flower girl because of her skin color. AITA for refusing to take care of my younger brother after he made a huge life choice that goes against everything our family believes in. I, 32M, come from a pretty traditional family. Both of my parents are devoutly religious, and they raised me and my younger brother, Alex, 28M, with a strong emphasis on following the family's values. I've always been the responsible one in the family, and my parents tend to lean on me when decisions or crises arise. Alex, on the other hand, has always been the free spirit. He's impulsive, sometimes reckless, but he's always had a kind heart and a sharp mind. So here's what happened. About 6 months ago, Alex came out to the family as transgender. He wanted us to start calling him Alexis and use she/her pronouns. I won't lie, it was a shock. I've never encountered this in my immediate family before, and combined with how strict our parents are, it caused a massive uproar. Our parents basically disowned him in a verbal sense. They haven't physically kicked him out, but they've made it very clear that he isn't welcome if he insists on living as Alexis. They've stopped including him in family events and outright refused to acknowledge her. I try to mediate, but it's complicated. I love Alex, but I also feel pressure from our parents, who have been very manipulative about family loyalty. Fast forward a few months. Alexis lost her job due to budget cuts and couldn't afford her apartment. She came to me asking if she could stay in my place temporarily until she got back on her feet. I was immediately torn. On one hand, she's my sibling and I want to help. On the other hand, I knew my parents would find out and go ballistic. I also have a relatively small apartment, live alone, and work a demanding job, so having her move in would be a huge logistical challenge. I initially said I needed time to think. While I was thinking, Alexis started sending me messages almost daily, pleading, sometimes getting emotional. She reminded me of everything I did for her growing up, how I had always been there for her when no one else was. I felt guilty. I really did. But at the same time, my anxiety was through the roof just thinking about how this could affect my life. I'm not exaggerating. This isn't just a slight inconvenience. I have to completely rearrange my home, my work schedule, and my life for someone else, all while being in this constant emotional war with my parents. After a week of agonizing, I finally said no. I told her that I can't take her in because my apartment isn't suitable for 2 people long term. I'm working on a big project at work, and I have obligations I can't ignore. I suggested some alternatives. I looked up some affordable shared housing options, gave her contacts for local LGBTQ+ support organizations, and even offered to help her financially with a few months' rent somewhere if she applied for it quickly. I thought this was a fair compromise. The response was worse than I expected. Alexis was devastated. She accused me of abandoning her, of choosing our parents' approval over her well-being. She even said that if I really loved her, I'd find a way to make it work. She stopped talking to me for several days, and then sent a long email outlining how I was being the adult in the wrong way, and how I was prioritizing comfort over family. Honestly, I cried after reading it. I love her, but I also feel like I have limits. I don't know if I'm being selfish, cruel, or just reasonable. Things escalated further when my parents found out that I refused to let her move in. They've been sending me messages nonstop, pressuring me to do the right thing, and basically guilt-tripping me for not helping her. According to them, if I really cared about family, I would open my home without question. I tried explaining that I'm offering other support and that I'm not abandoning her, but it seems like nothing I do is good enough. Meanwhile, Alexis found a temporary shelter for LGBTQ+ youth and reached out to my other siblings, who are younger and live in different cities. Some of them sided with her, saying I'm being harsh and unsupportive. Others sided with me, saying that helping doesn't necessarily mean taking her into your own home. I feel stuck. I want to support her emotionally and financially in ways I can handle, but the idea of her living with me is something I genuinely can't do right now. I worry that if I force myself, it will harm our relationship in the long term, not help it. I guess my main question is this. Am I the asshole for refusing to let Alexis stay with me, even though I'm doing everything else I can to help? My parents think I'm a monster, Alexis thinks I've abandoned her, and some of my siblings are either mad at me or confused. I just don't know if my boundaries are unreasonable or if I'm actually doing the right thing by trying to help without completely appending my life. I feel like I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't, and it's tearing me apart. I just want to support my sibling without being completely swallowed by the crisis. So Reddit, AITA? AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my late parents' house for their wedding after what they did to me. So this situation has gotten completely out of hand, and my entire family is now split in half over it. I, 31F, and the oldest of three siblings. My brother, Ethan, 28M, and my sister, Lily, 25F, are both younger, and we grew up in a small coastal town where my parents own a large, beautiful house that's been in our family for generations. It's right on the cliffside, overlooking the ocean. My parents passed away 2 years ago, Dad from cancer, and Mom a few months later from stroke. Losing them so close together broke me in ways I can't describe. When they passed, they left the house to all three of us equally. But I was the one who stayed behind to take care of them in their final years. Ethan and Lily had both moved to the city and only visited occasionally. It wasn't out of malice. They just had their own lives. But I became the caretaker by default. I handled the hospital visits, the bills, the endless forms, and eventually the funerals. I moved into the house full-time to look after them, and after they passed, I never really left. At first, all three of us agreed that the house would stay in the family. We wouldn't sell it. I've been living there, maintaining it, paying property taxes, utilities, and repairs mostly out of my own pocket because I felt like it was my responsibility. Neither of my siblings offered to help financially, and I didn't push because I assumed it wasn't malicious, just neglect. Fast forward to this summer. Ethan got engaged to his fiancée, Amanda. They've been together for 4 years, and everyone likes her. Mostly. She's nice on the surface, but she has this way of acting like she's already part of every decision, even ones that have nothing to do with her. She's very assertive, I guess. A few months ago, Ethan called and said they wanted to have their wedding at the family house. He said it would be meaningful because it's where we grew up, and since it's on the coast, it would save them a lot of money on a venue. I was fine with the idea at first. I thought it was sweet. But then he casually added that they were planning to make a few changes to the property for the wedding. When I asked what that meant, he said they wanted to open up the view by removing part of the old rose garden, which my mom planted, putting up a tent, and possibly painting the porch a cleaner white. I told him that I didn't want any permanent changes made to the house or garden, but I'd be happy to help decorate temporarily for the event. He got defensive and said I was being dramatic. He said it was just paint and that the roses were overgrown anyway. I said no, and that's when things got tense. A week later, Amanda called me directly. She was overly cheerful at first, but then started listing off all the plans they'd already made. Caterers, musicians, guest lists, over 150 people. She said they'd booked everything based on using the house, and that they'd even told the photographer to come early for getting ready photos in my parents' bedroom. I was stunned. I told her no one had confirmed that with me. She laughed and said, "Oh, Ethan said you'd be fine with it." When I told her I wasn't, her entire tone changed. She said I was being selfish and that this is what Mom and Dad would have wanted, to bring family together. I told her my parents would have wanted respect for their home, not 150 strangers tramping through it. She hung up on me. 2 days later, Ethan showed up at the house unannounced. He was furious, saying I was holding the family hostage and that I didn't own the house. Technically, he's right. We all do. But when I asked if he'd been paying his share of taxes, utilities, or maintenance, he went quiet. I told him he could use the backyard for the ceremony if it was small and respectful, but not the whole property, and not with all those people. He called me controlling and left. Since then, it's been nonstop drama. My sister Lily initially sided with me. She said it was disrespectful, but after Amanda started sending her emotional texts about family unity, she switched sides. Now both of them are saying I'm being cruel and ruining their big day. The final straw came when I went into town last week and overheard Amanda talking to someone at the bakery. She was bragging about how, after the wedding, the house will finally feel like ours too. That word, ours, made my stomach drop. When I confronted Ethan about it later, he admitted that they plan to move into the house temporarily after the wedding because they're saving for a home. I asked where I was supposed to go, and he said, "You can stay with Lily for a while. You've had your time there." That was it for me. I told him flat out that the wedding is not happening at the house. Not the ceremony, not the reception, nothing. I said if he or Amanda step foot on the property without my consent, I'll call the police. He accused me of tearing the family apart and said I'll regret it when I'm old and alone. Now my phone is blowing up. Half of our relatives think I'm heartless and gatekeeping my parents' legacy. The other half think Ethan and Amanda are entitled brats. My aunt told me to be the bigger person and just let them have it because it's only one day. But it's not one day to me. It's my home. It's where I sat with my mom during her chemo, where I cooked my dad his last meal, where I still keep their photos and belongings. The idea of them turning it into a wedding backdrop feels like a violation. Lily told me Ethan is talking about forcing a sale of the house if I don't compromise. I reminded her that he can't sell without my consent, but the fact that he's even threatening that broke me. This house is the only piece of my parents I have left, and now it feels like it's slipping away because of a wedding that hasn't even happened yet. I know I could just let them have the day and keep the peace, but something in me refuses. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's grief, maybe it's the memory of my mom tending her roses while humming under her breath. I can't stand the idea of people trampling through that garden for the sake of someone else's photo ops. My cousin told me I'm letting emotion cloud my judgment, and that it's just a property. But it's not just a property, it's my home. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use our late parents' house for their wedding after everything they've done. AITA for not letting my sister's fiancé stay in my house after he insulted my family. This has been a really stressful situation, and I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong or if my sister and everyone else is overreacting. I'm going to try to give all the context without leaving anything out. I, 28F, own a small but cozy house in my city. I've lived here for about 3 years, and I'm very proud of it. I'm someone who likes having close friends and family over, but I also value my privacy. I'm independent, and my house is a reflection of that. A few months ago, my sister, 30F, got engaged to a guy named Daniel, 32M. I'll admit, I wasn't crazy about him from the start, but I tried to be polite because I wanted to be supportive for my sister's happiness. The trouble started about 6 weeks ago. My sister asked if she and Daniel could stay at my house for a weekend because they had some errands in my city and were planning on going to a wedding nearby. I said yes, thinking it would be a short visit and a chance for us to bond. I honestly didn't anticipate that it would turn into a nightmare. From the moment they arrived, Daniel was unusually critical. At first, it was little things, complaining that the furniture wasn't luxury grade, saying my kitchen looked kind of dated, and making offhand comments about my taste in decorations. I laughed it off at first, thinking maybe he was just awkward. My sister didn't seem bothered, so I assumed she was okay with it. The situation escalated during dinner on the first night. I had cooked a meal that I was proud of, a homemade lasagna with garlic bread and a salad. I took my time making it and even bought some dessert for a local bakery. Daniel didn't even try the food and instead made a big show of saying he usually eats only healthy, organic meals and that my lasagna looked greasy and unhealthy. I felt my face heat up and I asked him politely if he wanted me to make him something else. He rolled his eyes and said, "No, it's fine, but I just don't see how anyone can eat this regularly." I tried to keep the mood light, but it felt like an attack. The next day, they went out for a few hours, and I thought maybe things would calm down. But when they returned, Daniel made a comment about my furniture again, specifically my sofa, which I'd had for years. He said, "I can't believe you actually sit on this thing. Don't you think it's kind of embarrassing for someone your age?" I was stunned. I told him that it was comfortable and that I liked it. He laughed and said, "Well, maybe it's comfortable if you don't care what anyone thinks." At that point, I felt like I was being personally attacked in my own home, and I started to get really upset. Later that evening, my sister asked if we could play a board game together. I was hesitant, given how tense everything had been, but I agreed. Daniel immediately started criticizing the rules I explained, saying I was doing it all wrong, and that his way was better. When I pointed out that the rules I was using were standard for that version of the game, he shrugged and said, "Well, maybe your version is outdated, like everything else here." My sister tried to smooth things over, but I could tell she was uncomfortable too. The breaking point came the next morning. I had made pancakes for breakfast, which I knew Daniel liked, and I invited everyone to sit at the table. Daniel took one bite and then loudly said, "Wow, I can't believe someone actually eats this stuff every day. No offense, but your cooking is kind of sad." I felt a mix of anger and humiliation. I asked him to leave the table if he didn't want to eat, and he smirked and said, "I'm just being honest." You should take it as constructive criticism. I told him that honesty isn't criticism when it's meant to insult, and at that point, he got up and stormed out of the kitchen. I realized I didn't want him in my house anymore. I went upstairs, texted my sister, and told her that I was uncomfortable having Daniel stay after he repeatedly insulted my home, my cooking, and my belongings. I told her that if she wanted to stay, she could, but he couldn't. My sister got very upset. She accused me of overreacting and said I was being rude and ungrateful for not hosting him. She argued that it was just his way of being blunt and that I was taking it too personally. I stood my ground, but she eventually left with Daniel and told me not to contact her for the rest of the weekend. Since then, my family has been split. Some of them think I did the right thing by defending my home and not tolerating insults, while others think I should have put up with him for my sister's sake. My sister has barely spoken to me and has been posting on social media about how family drama ruined their trip, which I feel is unfair because I didn't cause the insults. I am honestly torn. On one hand, I feel like anyone should have the right to protect their home and not be subjected to repeated rudeness. On the other hand, I feel like I might have escalated things by outright banning him from staying. I didn't physically throw him out. I just told my sister he wasn't welcome. I'm starting to worry that I've permanently damaged my relationship with her. So, AITA for not letting my sister's fiancé stay in my house after he insulted my family and me? The situation has been weighing on me heavily, and I just want to know if I overreacted or if I was justified in standing up for myself and my home. Character count: 6,450. Do you want me to make a slightly longer version that hits closer to 7,000 characters while keeping the same style? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she tried to force me to financially support it. I, 32F, have a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Megan, 28F. We grew up in a middle-class family, and our parents worked really hard to make sure we had a decent life, but money was always tight. Megan has always been a bit entitled, and she tends to assume that other people will bend over backward to accommodate her desires. I've tried to set boundaries over the years, but she often brushes them off as me being difficult or selfish. About 2 years ago, Megan got engaged to her boyfriend, James. Initially, I was happy for her and supportive in the usual way, congratulating her, helping her brainstorm ideas, and giving general emotional support. But almost immediately after the engagement, Megan started dropping hints that she expected me to contribute financially to her wedding. At first, it was subtle. She'd mention certain venues she liked and say, "Oh, this place is a bit expensive, but maybe family can help." Then it escalated. She directly asked me to contribute a few $1,000s, saying it would cover the difference between the wedding she wanted and what her budget could handle. I was shocked. I don't make as much money as Megan seems to think I do, and I have my own financial responsibilities, including student loans and rent. I told her honestly that I couldn't afford to contribute thousands of dollars to her wedding and that she needed to budget within her own means. She seemed upset, but didn't push at that point. Then, she started to subtly guilt me. She would post pictures on social media of wedding dresses, venues, or decorations with captions like, "Wish family could help make this happen," or "It would be perfect if my sister could just pitch in." I tried to ignore it and maintain boundaries. I even offered to help in non-financial ways, helping with invitations, offering to drive vendors, helping with setup, but she seemed to want only monetary help. A few months ago, she invited me over to her apartment to discuss the wedding budget. I walked in expecting maybe a casual conversation about her plans, but instead, she laid out a spreadsheet detailing her wedding expenses, highlighting the family contribution section and telling me, point blank, that I would need to contribute $5,000 to cover certain costs. I froze. I reminded her again that I simply didn't have that kind of money and that it was unreasonable to demand it from me. She got visibly angry and said, "You're my sister. You should want to help me. It's just $5,000. You can find a way." At this point, I told her firmly that I would not be giving her money and that if her wedding depended on my financial contribution, she might need to make other plans. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive, and the conversation ended with her storming out. Since then, things have been tense. My parents have tried to mediate, But Megan has made it clear she is furious with me. She even told them that if I don't contribute, she doesn't want me at the wedding. My parents, caught in the middle, have been trying to negotiate, but I can't help feeling manipulated. I've spent months feeling anxious about the whole situation. Last week, Megan sent me a formal wedding invitation with a note that said, "I understand you can't help with the money, but I hope you can still come. I really want you there." I responded honestly, saying, "I appreciate the invite, but I cannot attend a wedding where my presence is conditional on me giving money I don't have. I hope you understand." She replied that my refusal made her feel humiliated and betrayed, and she since blocked me on social media. Now my extended family is involved. Some of them are upset with me for refusing to support my sister, and a few have suggested I should just find the money somehow to avoid creating family drama. Others are supportive and say Megan is being unreasonable. I feel terrible because I don't want to be estranged from my family, but I also feel like this is about boundaries and financial responsibility. I cannot and will not give money. I don't have to fund someone else's dream wedding, especially when I've tried to offer help in other meaningful ways. I'm left wondering if I'm being too rigid. Should I have just found a way to give her some money to avoid this fallout? Or is she genuinely in the wrong for demanding this from me? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she tried to force me to financially support it? Character count, 6,342 if you want. I can also draft a longer, even more dramatic version hitting closer to 7,000 characters, with additional family reactions, extended backstory, and dialogue to make it read like one of those viral Reddit AITA posts. This current version is more straightforward, but still fully in style. Do you want me to do that expanded version? AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding because of how he treated me growing up. I, 28M, have a younger brother, Kyle, 24M, and we grew up in a fairly complicated household. Our parents divorced when I was 10 and Kyle was 6. Mom had always struggled with mental health issues, and Dad was mostly absent. I took on a lot of responsibility for Kyle growing up, which I didn't mind at the time, but it definitely shaped the dynamic between us. I was protective of him, but also very aware that I was missing out on normal childhood experiences because I was constantly managing the fallout of our family life. Fast forward a bit, Kyle grew up to be a very charming and outgoing guy. He's always been the golden child in the eyes of most of our extended family, while I've been more of the quiet, responsible one. I supported him financially and emotionally through college because our parents couldn't help much, and I honestly didn't mind doing it first. I figure it was what big brothers are supposed to do. I also helped him move into his first apartment, paid for furniture when he had no money, and bailed him out of car repairs more times than I can count. Every time, he promised he'd pay me back, or that he'd make it up to me someday. Kyle got engaged last year to a woman named Melissa. I was genuinely happy for him, and I offered to help with wedding planning in any way I could. That's when things started to get weird. The first conversation about money came when he casually mentioned that he expected me to cover a significant portion of the wedding expenses because I have a stable job now and you make more than me. I was taken aback. We weren't even talking about the small stuff. He meant the actual venue, catering, and a good chunk of the honeymoon. I told him I wasn't planning to pay for his wedding. He laughed it off and said I owed him after everything I put him through. I reminded him that I didn't put him through anything. I helped him because I wanted to. After that, our relationship got tense. He started dropping subtle hints to other family members about how I refused to support him and how I was being selfish. Some relatives started asking me why I wasn't contributing, and I just told them the truth, that I wasn't comfortable footing a large portion of a wedding for someone who had never really acknowledged all the times I helped him when he was struggling. I also mentioned that I wasn't willing to put myself in debt for something that primarily benefits him. Things came to a head a few weeks ago. Kyle called me to discuss the seating chart, and I politely said I didn't want to be involved in that part because I didn't feel comfortable funding the event. He exploded. He accused me of holding a grudge, being jealous, and even suggested that I didn't care about him at all. I reminded him that my decision had nothing to do with jealousy and everything to do with financial boundaries and fairness. He then said something that really hurt. "I can't believe after everything I did for you growing up, you're acting like this." I was floored. Here's the thing. He's made it pretty clear that most of the everything he did was manipulative or conditional. He would guilt me if I didn't help him with homework when we were kids, and in college he would frequently borrow money without paying it back, then disappear for months. He has never once acknowledged that I've supported him through thick and thin, emotionally and financially, while he often treated me with a mix of indifference and entitlement. Now, suddenly, he's framing me as the bad guy for not subsidizing a luxury event for him. The wedding is in 2 months, and he's been sending me passive-aggressive texts daily, asking why I'm still being petty and insisting I help with small things like flowers and photography. I politely declined, offering to help in non-financial ways, like helping move decorations or giving input on the music. He said that wasn't enough. His fiancée even texted me once, asking me why I'm being so difficult and implying that my absence financially would ruin the wedding. I didn't respond to her. Now, my parents are in the middle, trying to convince me to give in. They say it's just a wedding and that I should let go of the past. I understand the sentiment, but I feel like if I give in now, I'm validating his manipulative behavior. I've spent my whole life accommodating him, and it seems like the only way he appreciates me is through money. I've considered just staying out of the wedding entirely to avoid conflict, but I really do want to be part of Kyle's life and support him emotionally. I offered to help with small, non-financial things like helping set up the venue, coordinating with vendors, or just being there on the day to support him, but he seems uninterested unless I'm writing checks. My partner, 29F, is fully supportive and says I'm setting healthy boundaries, but I can't help feeling guilty because the extended family is slowly starting to turn on me. Everyone keeps asking if I'll come around or do the right thing. I even got a call from one of my cousins saying I'm making a big deal out of nothing, and Kyle's only asking for a fraction of what he deserves. That hurt because from my perspective, Kyle doesn't deserve money from me just because he's my brother. I've helped him plenty already, and I don't feel like my previous support should be erased or discounted just because he wants more now. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding, given how he treated me throughout our lives and how he's framing me as selfish for not subsidizing a luxury event. I don't want to be the villain, but I also don't want to be financially exploited. I'm genuinely worried this will damage our relationship permanently, but I also don't feel like I'm in the wrong. I've tried reasoning calmly with him, but he refuses to see my perspective, and I'm starting to wonder if I need to step back completely to protect myself. I love my brother, but it feels like he only loves me when I'm convenient or when money is involved. Has anyone else been in a situation where a family member expected financial support for something they wanted, but didn't appreciate all the ways you've supported them before? AITA for refusing to give up my room for my sister's baby, even though I'm the one who paid for it? So I, 24F, live with my parents and my older sister, Hannah, 27F. Before anyone jumps on me for still living with my parents, let me explain. It's a big house that my grandparents left to my dad, and I actually helped pay for a major renovation on it 3 years ago. I moved back home after college because my parents' health wasn't great and they needed help maintaining the place. The deal was that I could have the upstairs suite, which used to be 2 smaller rooms, but we combined them into one big one. And in return, I'd help financially with the renovation and take care of some household stuff like bills and groceries. I work remotely as a graphic designer, and my suite is basically my home and office. It's got my desk, my equipment, my books, and all my furniture, most of which I bought. I even paid for the new flooring and a custom-built wardrobe because I planned to stay for a few years until I could buy my own place. Hannah, on the other hand, moved out years ago, but came back recently after a messy breakup with her boyfriend, Jake. She was about 6 months pregnant when she moved back in. My parents were happy to take her in, but our house only has 3 bedrooms. My suite upstairs, my parents' room downstairs, and the smaller guest room next to theirs. Naturally, Hannah took the guest room. Everything was fine for a while, but as she got closer to giving birth, she started complaining about space. The guest room is small, and she kept saying it would be impossible to fit a crib and all the baby stuff. I suggested maybe rearranging things or using the little storage room across the hall for extra stuff, but she said that wasn't good enough. She started dropping comments like, "It's not fair that you have all that space just for yourself when I'm having a baby." A week after she gave birth, She and my mom sat me down for what they called a family discussion. I had a bad feeling, and sure enough, they said they thought it would make the most sense for Hannah and the baby to have my room. The reasoning? It's bigger, quieter, since it's upstairs, and would give her more space to raise her kid. They wanted me to move into the small guest room instead. I thought they were joking at first, but my mom said, "You're young and single. You can manage in a smaller room. Hannah needs the space more than you do right now." I reminded them that I paid for that renovation, that I work from home, and that it's not just my bedroom. It's also my workspace. My dad was quieter, but said he thought it would be temporary, maybe for a year or so until Hannah got on her feet. I flat out said no. I told them this was unfair and that I wasn't going to give up the room I invested thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours into. I also pointed out that Hannah's situation wasn't my fault. She chose to have a baby, not me. That didn't go over well. My mom said I was being selfish and unhelpful to family. Hannah started crying, saying I was making her feel unwelcome and that she had nowhere else to go. I didn't yell or anything, but I said calmly that I wasn't moving, period. End of discussion. For the next few weeks, the atmosphere in the house was awful. My mom and Hannah barely spoke to me except to make passive-aggressive remarks like, "Some people only think about themselves," or "the baby would have slept so well upstairs." My dad mostly stayed neutral, though I caught him glancing at me in that disappointed dad way. Then last weekend, while I was out running errands, I came home and found some of my stuff moved into the hallway. My computer setup was still there, but my dresser and personal things had been shifted. When I asked what happened, my mom said they were just measuring to see if the crib would fit and that I was overreacting. But I could tell they'd actually try to move things around to make space for Hannah. That was the last straw. I told them if they tried to touch my room again, I'd move out, but I'd also stop contributing to household expenses. For context, I currently pay about 40% of the bills and groceries because I make a steady income and wanted to help. My mom looked shocked, and my dad told me I was threatening the family over a room. I told them I was simply setting boundaries, and that if they thought I was selfish, then I'd happily take my selfishness and my money somewhere else. After that blow-up, things went nuclear. Hannah cried again, saying I'd ruined everything and that she didn't feel comfortable staying here anymore. My mom accused me of creating tension when Hannah just needed support as a new mom. I told them I'd support her emotionally, but not by giving up my personal space and the room I paid for. That night, I started looking for apartments. Now my dad keeps asking me to reconsider for the sake of peace, and my mom barely talks to me at all. Hannah is apparently looking into staying with a friend for a while, and I feel bad about that, but also, she's an adult, and I don't think it's my job to sacrifice my own comfort and work environment for her decisions. I know family is supposed to help each other, but it feels like they're taking advantage of the fact that I've always been the responsible one. Still, I can't shake this guilt. Maybe I could have offered to switch temporarily, or maybe I'm being too rigid. But every time I think about it, I remember all the time and money I poured into that space. It's the first thing I've ever truly made my own, and I don't think it's fair that they're treating it like community property just because it's inside my parents' house. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to give up my room for my sister and her baby, even though it's just temporary. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.